What's going on, moms and dads? Welcome to the latest episode of the Fade You podcast. We are recording on a rare Monday. Game 7 between the Rangers and Devils just ended. Maybe not the most memorable Game 7 of all time, but we are going to talk some hockey tonight. So everybody who's listening, or if you listen to this after the fact, we'll get you all caught up on the Stanley Cup playoffs as round 1 is now officially in the books. Roll call here. My name is Matt. We've got Joe, we've got Chris Duke, we got a guest, and we'll get to him in just a sec. But the Fade You podcast is the sports betting show for the everyday bettor. Whether you're a total degen betting puck lines, totals, shot on goal props, whatever the hell you're betting on, or if you're just looking for a little action, we got you covered. We're glad you're here checking out our show, whether you're new or been here for a while. Thanks for hanging out with us to talk hockey on this episode. So to talk Stanley Cup playoffs, wanted to bring back our friend Alex Smith. He's on Twitter at AXSmithSports. Alex, huge hockey bettor, diehard hockey fan. So I had to have him on and talk some hockey playoffs. Alex, how's it going? Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I mean, this is a fun time of year. It's a busy time of year, of course. But just as a fan and even as a bettor too, like it's enjoyable, and you can kind of split the difference, right, with the playoffs. I mean, you have your bets and you're rooting for those, but you just want to see good hockey at the end of the day. And like you said, this Game 7 was mildly uneventful. But if you had a ticket on the Devils to come back and win the series, congrats to you. So it's always fun to see it from the different angles, but just always an enjoyable time, the spring and summer, and getting ready to see the continuation of the greatest tournament in all sports.
Absolutely.
Damn
round
right.
Round one was awesome. I think there was it something like 23 overtime games in round 1 or something like that? And road teams actually did real well, I think, at the end of the day. So we'll definitely talk about that in a sec. We'll talk about why road teams do well. We'll talk about why there are so many upsets in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And this is definitely a year where that has held true. So round 1 in the books, a lot of really good series, no sweeps. That's not uncommon in hockey. I mean, just because the team is a higher seed and has 30 more points in some cases does not mean it's going to be an easy series. Just ask our friends back east in Boston. I'm sure we'll touch on that. So, Alex, let's start with this. Just biggest takeaway, biggest storyline coming out of round 1 as this is all wrapped up, or if you got a couple, just people who are maybe casually watching, what should people know coming out of this opening round?
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to start with the Boston Bruins, right? This is a team that had a historic regular season run. And, I'm dumbfounded by them because at the beginning of the year, they were looking at, no Marchand and no McAvoy up until Christmas time. Jim Montgomery coming back in after the tumultuous exit he had in Dallas. And, he kind of resurfaced with the assistant job in St. Louis. There was a lot of question marks going with this team. And I actually bet them under 98.5 points. I thought this team might struggle to make the playoffs. They'll probably be a wild card contender, right? Well, I look really stupid with that. Look, they're the best regular season team in NHL history by far. But what we've seen from now 3 teams in my lifetime that have had the best NHL regular season, they all didn't win cups, and 2 of them got bounced in the first round. You saw the sweep of the 2019 Tampa Bay Lightning, and now you saw a 3-1 collapse by this Bruins team. And we always admire hockey and playoff hockey, right, because of the warrior mentality, guys playing through injuries. I just heard about Joel Eriksson tried to play Game 3, only made it 19 seconds in because he was trying to skate on a broken leg. We admire those stories, right? Yeah, it's insanity, and that's what fuels the passion of the game. But at some point, you have to understand that you're human and you can't hurt the team. And Linus Ullmark should not have been playing in as many games if at any point in this series like he did. And they made the change too late. You had a great backup goaltender, Jeremy Swayman, who had, fantastic numbers. They won the Jennings Trophy together. Ullmark's certainly a shoe-in to win the Vezina. But that's why you have 2 goaltenders. We talk about this in the regular season. You have 2 goalies to keep you afloat to be a good regular season team to get to the playoffs. Well, they had 2 goalies who were capable enough to handle the workload in the playoffs. One was hurt, and they chose to wait to the last minute to make the switch. So Boston really did it to themselves. It wasn't that Florida played fantastic hockey. Yes, they had more energy in that 7-game series than they did really the last month and a half of the season, and certainly in the middle months of the season when they looked like a team that was, destined to miss the postseason. just a year after winning the President's Trophy themselves. So that was the biggest takeaway for me, was just seeing that, like I said, anything can happen in this postseason. And just because the team's great in the regular season, it doesn't mean anything in the second season unless you can string together 4 wins in 7 games.
Joe, those of us who follow hockey maybe up in Northern California, the Bay Area, know that to be very, very true.
Facts.
Oh my God. Regular season hero. It's a totally different game. And it's interesting with the upsets. And Chris, I know you wanted to really just dive into the upsets. So we'll get to that in a sec. But I don't know if it's because it really is happening at the same time as the NBA playoffs, which can get really chalky when you contrast the two. I don't know if it's on the heels of March Madness, where there's so many upsets and you're like, okay, pro hockey, like, well, we'll see the better teams advance. And it just more often than not is not the case. Chris, you wanted you were texting me this morning about, God damn, why didn't we fire more dogs in some of these series? Like, look at the way these have gone. You want to try to get into that a little bit?
Well, yeah, I wanted to pick Alex's brain about, like, because we had that conversation about March Madness. What do you like to see? Do you want the better teams to advance and see, into the Sweet 16, or do you like, us as dog bettors? We love the underdogs. And now that we've seen teams like the Kraken and Florida beat these better teams, Alex, what do you think? Do you like this? I mean, obviously, I don't know if you had any future. Obviously, like you said, people who had Florida, Kraken, these big dogs, good for you. Yeah. But do you think they're going to be? Do you look to fade this now? Do you think, hey, they just are they going to be competitive, or do you think? Like you said, if Florida was lucky to be in the playoffs and to scrape out that win, how do you look at this moving forward? With these dogs.
Yeah, it's a confuzzling season for me because, and I'm a dog player naturally at any sport. I gravitate toward looking at dogs, especially with series prices, because that's really the deepest I get into futures. I don't, other than some point totals in the NHL, I don't have futures. I don't have win totals in NFL or NBA. I like to be in the here and now and bet daily. Maybe take some sprinkles for things, heading into the postseason. So I thought this was one of the weaker, since we've gone to this wild card format in the NHL. I thought this was the weakest group of wild card teams. I mean, the East, they were all beating the crap out of each other, and it seemed like none of them deserved to be in the playoffs. The Islanders, Pittsburgh, Florida, Washington, Buffalo, Detroit was hanging around then. All of them seemed like fringe garbage teams. So I kind of just thought, okay, well, Carolina can kind of just walk through. Boston can just walk through early. And some of the other series I thought would be a little tighter. I thought, New Jersey and New York, those are, 2 evenly matched teams, big rivalry. That would be kind of close. Edmonton, LA, felt like that would be kind of close because it was close last year. Even Tampa, Toronto, I thought that was going to be more of a blowout this year, favoring Toronto. Toronto did get it done, but not making it easy on themselves. So, yeah, this wasn't one of those years where I felt like, oh, there could be a lot of dog upsets, and they happened to be. Now, there's been years where I felt there would be a lot of dog upsets. There were, and I cashed with them. The biggest bet that I cashed in series-wise was on Dallas, and I laid $1.40 with them. Now, I was able to get a dog price adjusted when they went down the series 2-1. And I like doing that now that we have that flexibility with books to bet in series. There's some things I don't like to even touch. I just want to watch game one and observe it, and then I can make my assessments. Now I can go series spread or go, I like to bet the series to end in a number of games, not necessarily who wins it. So there's so many ways to bet in the playoffs, and you can get creative with things, and you can, any style of handicapping you utilize during the regular season, you can modify it to your style for the playoffs because there's so many more options.
You touched on the weaker wild card teams in the West or in the East. How about the Kraken, man? What?
Yeah,
it's like people are going to think that it's shocking because the Avs won the Stanley Cup last year. Did you see that coming at all? Just the way the Kraken play and maybe the flaws in Colorado. Like, did we maybe underestimate that this might be a tough series for the Avs?
Yes. And I think the biggest drawback for me and why I didn't go heavy into the series toward the Kraken was because I wondered how they would go and play under the pressure just the first time being in the playoffs. This wasn't the Cinderella, blinders on year one that the Vegas Golden Knights had, right? that was a completely different thing. That's something we may never see in any major sport ever.
And that's what everybody's going to compare it to. And it's, right. I agree. I totally agree. Very different.
Yeah. So this was the second year. And, we saw, this was one of the biggest rebounds between a season in NHL history. So you thought, okay, well, they played well and they hung around in a tough division. The Pacific Division was tough this year. At any point, it seemed like Seattle, LA, Edmonton, and Vegas, they were rotating to see who would win that division. So those 4 teams were solid and fairly evenly matched. Different styles, but they were evenly matched. So it's not too shocking. But I think people really didn't realize how good Colorado was and how lucky they were to even not only make the playoffs, win the division. When you missed over 500 man games in a season, they've had so many injuries. They never had their full starting lineup that was projected on paper for opening night at any point in this year. They never had everybody. I mean, even go down to Cale Makar getting a 1-game suspension. They always missed someone key in all 82 and 89 games they played this year, and that's hard to win when you can't put together your best lineup. So when you add that to playing against a Kraken team that plays full team hockey, right? There's no big stars, there's no egos. Everybody's playing as a full collective unit, just trying to win and get through. And that's what you need in the playoffs, where you have this, broken down team that's already come off their Stanley Cup hangover, trying to do it again, and they just didn't have the energy. And Seattle was able to just outlast them.
It's a good reminder for me because it feels like kind of the way the NHL is now and the way the playoffs are now, to win a cup, you've got to have like the elite high-end talent. And maybe that wasn't really the case 10 years ago when I responded to your tweet, the LA Kings 10 years ago, right? With a team full of like good B-level players, but no like elite high-end guy can go through and win multiple series. But it's a good reminder that a team like the Kraken that plays sound defensively, that rolls 4 lines, that all chip in and contribute, can win a series against a team that might be a little overrated, a little flawed. And then you combine that with the fact it's just really hard to repeat in general. I mean, we just saw it with Tampa, but I mean, like you said, Colorado had a lot going against them this season with guys banged up and missing. So, Chris, that's where you get your Kraken going on the road and winning Game 7.
Crazy, huh? For Florida and Kraken to both do it. I was thinking let's money line both of them, and you hope for 1-1 for both of them to do it. Oh, unbelievable!
Should have parlayed those puppies right there.
That's what I texted Chris.
That's a nice one. Yeah.
When it was clear last night in the third period that the Avalanche, the McKinnon line would get a scoring chance, and then no one else would even maintain the puck in the offensive zone. Mm-hmm. And I texted Chris, like, man, they're just not generating any chances. Like, what would that Kraken Panthers parlay have paid? And you know, a lot of people went the other way, right? Like, Joe, we're all about the Fade You narratives. How many people out there said there is zero way the Bruins, the best regular season team, are going to lose Game 7 at home, and there is
no way
the defending champ, simply no way that these guys are going to lose Game 7 at home, and they both lost.
All the Trents of the world would love to fire that bet. They did. Probably got it at like what, plus 110. They're like, oh, free money right here.
No way it loses.
I went on shows 2 weeks before the playoffs started and said that Boston probably would win the cup and only lose 5 games or less the entire way through. Now, technically, I got that right. They only lost 3, or only lost 4.
That's true.
That kind of counts. But I thought they were going to dominate this year. I thought this was going to look like a playoff series out of the 90s, like how we saw Detroit run through teams, or even the Devils back in the mid 90s and 2000s. I thought they were just going to obliterate everybody because they just looked that good. And we talk about having the high end talent, but you have to have depth. Think about the dynasty teams. Think about LA's second title. Think about the Hawks. Think about the Lightning. It wasn't always Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves doing everything. It was Troy Brouwer and Dustin Byfuglien and Dave Ballin and Brian Bickle. It was the Brian Russ and the Brian Dumoulin's that were doing just as much as the Sidney Crosbys and Evgeny Malkins. Braden Point, I think he got robbed of 1, if not 2 Conn Smythe trophies the years that they won Stanley Cup to Tampa Bay. So it's having those second and third line guys that step up. They're the ones that get you those double overtime goals when everybody's, sucking dirty pond water and breathing it. And, when you need a big hit, it's not going to be the superstar. It's going to be that fourth line guy who's only taking 2 shifts the whole night that obliterates somebody and gets the crowd fired up. And now, you started a scrum and now you got a power play on your side and that goal ties the game. It's those every piece matters. And if you don't have depth in the playoffs, it's almost a bigger detriment than if you don't have top line stars. I'd rather have 4 lines of gritty, hard-working guys than just 2 superstar lines and then a bunch of nobodies. Why Edmonton has struggled for years, right? It's always been the McDavid and Draisaitl show, but now they added Zach Hyman. They got guys like Klim Kostin, who no one's ever heard of until this year, and all of a sudden he pops up, and now he's chipping in big goals. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is filled in as a role player now. Darnell Nurse had his struggles, but he still chips in. Evander Kane, finding his way into the mix. So having depth is more important in my eyes than having that big star talent.
Vegas also, in their series, they had a lot of guys chipping in up and down the lineup. And I hate to see it. I hate Vegas. I need them knocked out for my own personal well-being. But I mean, you got to tip your cap. Like they had Amadio score an overtime winner. Like they've got guys coming out of nowhere and chipping in goals, and they're getting great goaltending from a dude who was a backup on Winnipeg a couple years ago. Was he on waivers? No one wanted him. Brossoit?
I think it was he was just an unrestricted free agent because they were so I'm trying to remember who was the third in Winnipeg at that time. It wasn't Riddick because Riddick was still in Calgary, but they were really high on the guy and they just kind of let him go. And I think that guy ended up actually not playing in the AHL. He ended up going back to Sweden. And so then Brossoit got picked up because of the whole goalie mess of Fleury getting traded for nothing, Leonard having his issues, and then he just ended up getting picked up. But he was a decent goalie. He was a good backup in Winnipeg at times behind Connor Hellebuck, who that's kind of a cushy job to have because Hellebuck's one of those old school workhorse goaltenders. So you always get to see how good the backup is with a team like Winnipeg. But Brossoit's a decent goaltender.
That's your boy, Chris, your French boy, Brossoit.
Can we discuss all the Maple Leaf videos?
Oh my God!
When they won,
we got to talk Leafs.
Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, and I work with a lot of Maple Leaf fans too on one of my shows, Edgework, and they're just and I mean, it's good to see, right? Like I never understood the whole hatred with the Leafs as a Hawks fan, and I live in Chicago, grew up in Chicago, live in St. Paul. I have no real tie or affinity to any Canadian team. And I just hear kind of secondhand hatred about the Leafs, but like they've never annoyed or they're a bad team and they're a historic team, but I've never gotten all upset. Like people hate them like the Yankees, and it's just kind of crazy.
How do you hate a team that hasn't won a playoff series since what was it, 93 or something?
They hadn't even get out. It's the first time they got out of the first round since 2004. So literally 04. So like Twitter.
It's 93 since Canada's won a Stanley.
So they won a cup, right? Yeah. So Twitter, Facebook, and high definition TV didn't exist the last time the Leafs won a first round until 24, 40 hours.
That's nuts.
And so, but now, and Leafs fans are, they're still waiting with bated breath because they're like, well, we got to get through the next round. They're still worried about the cup drought, and you can't harbor on that as a fan. And it's easy for me to say that now as a Hawks fan, staring at a replica Stanley Cup banner in front of me. But, we were awful for years. And at some point you have to just, okay, well, once we get to the playoffs, it's just whatever happens. We can't carry the past with us. Like, this isn't – Doug Gilmour's not walking through that door, to use the Rick Pitino quote. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're in the here and now, and these guys have to win. We can't carry that baggage of 40, 50 years literally into this postseason. And I think now with them winning that series – maybe the players can get that pressure off of them, and then the fans can too, and the fans can maybe enjoy themselves, make a little bit more noise in that building because Toronto, I mean, that place sounds like a mausoleum during the regular season sometimes. It's awful. They're not a full-on, they say the wine and cheese crowd. That's what they're saying on TNT. It's like, no, you got to get into it. The playoffs are about grit, not just for the guys on the ice, but as the fans too. We're all invested in this as a fan, and all this time and all this money with these tickets. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a collective It's a collective thing. And you win as a team, the fans are an extension of that. That's why we, talk about home ice advantage. That's your home ice advantage. It's not about all the locker rooms are nice and look the same. It's about how that crowd responds to that team.
Which is what made that Boston L so much sweeter. Like they was so loud and then just dead silent as soon as Florida
they only lost 3 games at home all regular season, and then they lose 3 in the playoffs. I mean, it's
my God.
It can't possibly get better than that for a Leafs fan, right? Like, not only do you advance in an epic way, right? Beating Tampa Bay, who beat you last year, but then the next day you get to watch Boston choke away a 3-1 series lead, be up with a minute to go, get tied, and then lose in overtime at home. There's no way it gets better than that for Leafs fans.
It reminds me of in 2013 and all the great moments in that season with the Blackhawks. But as great as the Patrick Kane double overtime goal is to win the Western Conference and the 17 seconds to win the Cup, coming back from 3-1 and seeing Brent Seabrook score the overtime goal to beat the Detroit Red Wings. The hated Detroit Red Wings and knocked them not just out of the playoffs, but literally the Western Conference because they went to the East the next season.
Yeah,
that was the apex point of that postseason by far. It's a moment I will never forget in my life. So yeah, it means something more when your rival loses on top of you.
2 quick things you made me think of. You mentioned the Rick Pitino quote. Did you have someone in mind for the Pitino game for the Rangers yet?
Oh, I already posted it.
You posted it.
Jaromir Jagr.
That's amazing. Those are so great because God, you just forget that you forget about the random dudes like, oh yeah, Jagr did have a stop playing for the Rangers.
Yeah,
and some of the random dudes that you come up with, those are so great. And then the other thing with the Leafs too, you talk about it being a mausoleum. Is that because they play fucking Hall and Oates? Like, and you've talked about the worst goal songs. I don't get it. I've never understood it
either. Yeah, and that's not even Hall. Like, it's not like I hate Hall and Oates, right? But that's just not their best song. Yep.
Muted, Alex. Yeah.
Especially because is there something about? Is it because of the glass going up? Is it just me, or is there something electric about? Even I went to a Ducks game last year when they sucked, and it got loud. Is there something about that? It's so the hockey game gets so loud. I remember almost your ears are ringing like you went to a concert. It's such a beautiful atmosphere.
Yeah. When a building is just up in arms like that. I mean, I think about, like I said, the United Center, even Xcel Energy Center. I mean, that place is usually even for a regular season, that place can get really loud. And this is some places just have that energy, some don't. And that's in all sports. You can you talk about it all the time in college football. It means the most in college football. It truly, literally will affect a college football game or a college basketball game more than anything else. But those environments are a big aspect, not just as a fan, but when you come down to handicapping, they do. It's not the end all be all, but you have to factor it in somewhere.
No, that's so true. So, all right, let's go to this. Expect the unexpected in the first round, right? We talked about Tampa's out, Colorado's out, Boston's out. So who should at this point, and we know that should does not happen all the time in hockey. I mean, the first round literally just proved that. Who should at this point come out of both conferences, in your opinion?
In the West, it's a 2-horse race. It's Dallas and Edmonton. And I thought that was going to be the Western Conference Final going into this postseason. That would be tremendous. As someone who remembers those great series from the late 90s and early 2000s, that would be just really fun to see. Yeah, Todd Marchment with the Game 7 overtime winner back in 97. And those are some just wonderful hockey moments of my childhood. So just seeing those 2 teams in the final would be great in the conference final. The East, it seems to be a real crapshoot, right? I mean, because you don't trust Toronto after winning the first round, right? No. I don't trust Florida, especially coming off of that grueling of a comeback to win in a series.
Yeah, you got to think Florida game 1, they're going to be just dead.
Right. Yeah. But then at the same time, I said, because I like Toronto to win that series in Tampa Bay, I said, I'm waiting for game 1 of round 2 to fade the hell out of Toronto. I can't do that now. so that kind of ruined those plans. And then the other matchup, you got Carolina, who, as great as they looked most of the regular season, they kind of limped into the postseason a little bit. Didn't make the easiest or shortest of work. That 5-game series win over the Islanders. It wasn't clean. You know what I mean? It was gritty. It was they kind of I think they lost to use the cat metaphor. They lost a few lives having to win that series. So they're not invincible. They're not untouchable. And now you got this Devils team that's surging. But I don't trust in Akira Schmid to stand on his head like he has been, and I don't think he's really been so much standing on his head as has been the Devils defensemen in front really selling out and blocking shots and doing what they need to do. I don't know why they couldn't do that in front of Vanacek in games 1 and 2, but at least they were able to do it for 4 of the games that Schmid started. So here they are advanced. So the East is wide open. I really don't know who's going to win out of the East. I'd have to really sit and think. But I think the West, and I think the winner of the West between Dallas and Edmonton is the winner of the Cup anyway. So the power shift that we saw in the East, and I'm a Western Conference guy, but I thought the East was way better. That has completely changed from round 1 to round 2 now.
Now the Boston's out, right? Everybody, it was Boston or the field, and now that they're out, it's like, oh my God! Every team that thought like, oh, maybe if things break our way, we can make a run. Like things broke your way, so now's your. I mean, what an opportunity! It's unbelievable. That Leafs Panthers. Do you fade Toronto because they finally got over the hump, or do you fade Florida because they just played in a really crazy Game 7? That is tough.
The one thing I will look at with that series in particular is that because I've noticed 5 of the last 6 regular season meetings went to overtime. So this probably will be a lot of regulation draw plays for me. And I don't know if I'll do like I did with Vegas Edmonton. I took a shot with them, or Vegas Winnipeg first round. I took a shot that there would be 3 overtime games at 8-1 at BetMGM. I might look for something in that 2 to 3 overtime range with the Toronto Florida series once that's posted up.
What about the Seattle Dallas? Could you see just the way the Seattle plays, and with Dallas having a pretty good goalie in Ottinger, could you see some overtime games in that series too? Some lower scoring, kind of 2-1 sort of games?
No. And I know everybody's saying that because of how Grubauer's played right now, but Grubauer can have a goalie duel for 7 games with Alexander Georgiev. He can't hang 7 games with Jake Ottinger. Jake Ottinger's on another level. Jake Ottinger is right there in my book with the Vasilevskis of the world. He's easily a top 5 goaltender. Very good. And he can steal you not just a game; he can steal you an entire series. And then when you look at how Dallas is built, they can play you any style you want. You want to go 2-1 and grind it out. That's what Minnesota tried to do. They were able to top them with that. You want to get into a boat race, they'll put up 7 or 8 goals on you in a heartbeat. So Dallas is dangerous because they're versatile. And they have a great goaltender. And that's the 2 biggest things you need amongst depth. And they have depth as well. So you add those 3 components together, it's a great playoff team to look at.
I'm kicking myself because a few weeks before the playoffs started, Pete DeBoer has gone to the Stanley Cup final with 2 different teams in his first season with those teams. And I'm like, God damn it. What if Colorado gets bounced? What if Pete goes back to the final? And I almost put a future on the Stars, and I'm kicking myself that I did. But Joe, can we get Joe Pavelski to not be dead? And can we get Joe Pavelski's name on the Stanley Cup?
Well, I mean, as far as I know, he was skating. He was skating in practice rushes today, so it seems like he should be a go for Game 1. Or probably a game time decision for Game 1. Hopefully, a certain go by no later than Game 2. And that changes everything because, seemed like, Jason Robertson was kind of out of sorts without him in the lineup. Like those 2 kind of really feed off one another. Pavelski's that gritty guy that gets in front and screens on power plays, which is something you desperately need. So to have him back in the lineup, even if he's a little bit limited, but he can still just be in those areas and be that position guy and be someone to take pressure away from his line mates. The fact that he's there and he's an option opens ice up for everybody else around him. So yeah, that'll be a key piece to get back. And especially if Jared McCann is not a go for Seattle, that would be a big loss on top of a big addition with Dallas.
Yeah.
Let's just get a Dallas, New Jersey final so we can root for Pavelski and Timo and just be happy that some semblance of a San Jose Sharks going to win a cup.
There you go.
We know the Sharks are not winning.
And for Vegas to not anybody but Vegas, and preferably Joe Pavelski would be first choice by far. I remember when they were in the final against Tampa a couple years ago, it was like, oh my God, if Pavelski wins a cup, that would be great. He's so beloved for Sharks fans. I mean, he's the man.
Yeah, I have a Pavelski jersey. It's It was a sad day
It's a
when he
mess.
left, man.
Yeah. They fucked up bad on that one for sure. They've fucked up a lot actually to put themselves in this situation, but that was a pretty bad one. Alex, let's get you out of here with this. Just more of a general sports related question. So I'm having a tough time because my Sacramento Kings went down yesterday, right?
Yeah.
I mean, really, really fun season for the Kings. Took the Warriors to Game 7. Nothing to be ashamed of. Still bummed it's over. As a fan, when your team loses in the playoffs, are you the kind of guy that will say, tip my cap, if you beat me, great, I'm not going to root against you next round? Or are you like me and you're just like a bitter piece of shit, and now you're like, I don't care who they're playing, I need them to lose because they made me feel like shit, so now I want them to go down hard? Where do you stand on this?
It depends on the team and series. And it's funny, I just had this conversation a couple hours ago, but it makes me think about 2012 with the Hawks. And they played the Phoenix Coyotes. And the Hawks just dogged it and half-assed it for 5 games, got quickly dispatched. I remember breaking a chair in my apartment after Game 3. And
sounds like something Chris would do.
and all I wanted was for Arizona to get knocked out. They went all the way to the Western Conference Final. They did eventually lose to the Kings, but I wanted them to lose desperately because they did not play well enough to win that series. The Hawks gave it away. So yeah, in that sense. But if it's an even balanced series, which that Warriors Kings series, that was just a fun, good balanced series, and the experienced team found a way to win in a gritty time. I wouldn't be screw the Warriors, and especially because they're playing the Lakers. It's like, do you really want the Lakers to win?
That is my crisis. How in the hell can I root for LeBron and the Lakers, who I'm sick and tired of,
No way,
and who I just have hated for my whole life?
Right. Yeah.
But so the Warriors just broke my heart, so I'm like, what do I do?
Maddie, I think you got to go the opposite. You just root for the team that beat your team, because then if they go all the way and win it, you have that ability to say, "Oh, yeah, well, we lost to the champs, so we deserve to lose."
Yeah.
So
see,
that I can't do. I've never been. And trust, and Joe, we know the Sharks have lost a lot in the playoffs in our lives. I've never been able to be like, oh, well, at least we lost to the eventual champion. Fuck that.
Yeah. You guys were not. I can tell you, you guys were not rooting for the Hawks in 2010 to beat Philly, right?
No, absolutely not. No.
Yeah. So yeah, no, yeah. So
after the way they dusted the Sharks, absolutely not.
They were for sure
rooting for the Kings,
though, after they blew the 0-3.
Oh,
that was awful.
Now we're talking about all the Sharks under it. You're just taking me and Joe back to a place of
what? All right, I'll give you guys a great Shark story. I'll give you guys a great Shark story because the one of the best playoff moments of my entire life, from a betting standpoint, was when Sharks played the Kings. I had this series nailed down to a T, and I wish they had this exact series bet that they have now that's available at FanDuel. You can bet every game for each series, like who's going to win from however long you think the series is going to go. So I had Sharks to win the series pre-series. I bet Sharks game 1. I bet Sharks game 2. I bet Kings game 3 and the draw. Kings win in overtime. I bet Sharks game 4. They won. I bet Sharks game 5 puck line. Completely swept the board on that series.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. What do you remember? What year was that? Because they played the Kings a handful of times.
Was it 14? The first round series that went in 5. So I'd have to look up quickly. I want to say it's 2014 playoffs, or maybe.
Well, 2014, the Kings won again.
So no, all right. So then let's see. I'm scrolling on Hockey Reference.
And 2014 was the 3-0. Ugh.
So
I can't remember. Can't remember if they beat them in a series before. I think it might have been after.
Yeah, I'm trying to
maybe
remember now.
I don't know.
I think my only biggest.
It was 2016.
Okay.
First round, yeah. Sharks won 4-1.
Yeah, I think Sharks, when they were down 4-1 in the third period against the fucking Golden Knights, and then came back and won an OT to win Game 7. That was probably the most electric moment. Like, I was downstairs screaming at midnight. Fucking amazing. Yeah. But then they just go and just shit their pants. So that's typical Sharks. Can't get your hopes up.
Who did they lose to, Joe, in that second round? Do you remember? Do you remember? Or did they actually? Was that when they went to the conference final and lost to the Blues?
That's when they lost to the Blues.
Yeah, 2016 was the yeah.
Jeez, yeah,
it's
hard to keep track of all those Sharks
Avs.
playoff losses.
Then they played the Avs, I think.
No, they played. So 2016, they 4-1 series against LA. Then they went to 7 against. Wait, is it Nashville? 7 against Nashville, and then they lost 4-2 to the Blues, and then the Blues
to the Blues. As everybody got injured, everyone was dead.
Yeah,
and the Blues went on to win the cup. And yeah, it felt so good that we lost to the Blues, who went on to win the cup. Totally cheered for them. Fuck.
No, I hated the fucking Blues that year too.
So it'll be a really fun second round. So Alex, last thing. So Chris loves his dogs. He's a dog better like you are. Which dog in the second round is most live? So for Chris to go put his hard-earned cash on a dog to win a series, which dog is most live in your opinion?
I would have to. I don't even know if New Jersey, Carolina. I don't know if anybody's gonna open the dog. That might just open 110 each way. Right. So I would probably have to say, reluctantly, Florida, because we just don't. You can't trust in Toronto. They've won one series now in 20 years. So, at least Florida's been out of the first round in each of the last 2 seasons. I don't see them getting swept like they did last year against Tampa Bay. So I'd say maybe take a shot with Florida.
Now, are you going to wait? Are you going to bet any of these pre-flop? Or are you going to do what you said? Are you going to let game 1 play out and then maybe see if there's some value?
In that series, I will let game 1 play out. The only thing I have bet right now that I bet today was Dallas. And I got creative with that. I laid the series spread 1.5. I got plus 120. I also took a small shot with Dallas to win by a sweep at plus 700 and Dallas to win 4-1 at plus 350. And here's why. We haven't seen the schedules yet. They should be coming out at any moment. But based on what's going on at Climate Pledge Arena, they have a concert Saturday and there's a Seattle Storm preseason game on Tuesday. So we might be looking at games 3 and 4 back-to-back on Sunday and Monday. And if Dallas has a 2-0 lead at home and then going on the road, that could get a little dicey. I think they may be able to win one, if not both of those. So I grab that in pocket now.
I like that. That's a great nugget on the scheduling conflict. I saw that this morning, that there was something up with Seattle's. I mean, Seattle never thought they'd be in the second round, so they probably didn't know to hold the arena in case they're still playing in May.
You think it would be pretty easy to just move the Seattle Storm preseason game to maybe UW campus or anywhere else and let this important hockey game go on, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's only
that's above my pay grade.
I know it's only year 2, but geez, oh man. All right, Alex. Well, thanks for coming on again. That was a fun chat about the playoffs and just some general sports related stuff. You want to plug the Ice Guys and where people can tune in and what kind of stuff they can get?
Yes, the Ice Guys every single day during the playoffs and during the regular season next year, of course. But we're on YouTube. You can find it. Just Google the Ice Guys. Follow us on Twitter at @the_Ice Guys. We're on Monday through Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Saturdays and Sundays at noon Eastern. You can follow me on Twitter at AXSmithSports. My website, axsmithsports.com. And I'm on every podcast that's talking about hockey between now and June. So you could probably hear me.
Absolutely. No, we appreciate you coming on. We love talking some hockey. We don't do it enough. Chris, get us out of here with this. What happens sometimes when you bet on poop?
You might pick up a couple road dogs back to back. And like Joe said, you should have parlayed it.